This episode is brought to you by LinkedIn. Healthcare professionals can lead their careers with LinkedIn. Discover jobs by specialty, preferred shifts, and even desired salary. From mental health therapists to radiology technicians, it's now faster and easier for healthcare professionals to find the right fit. Learn more at linkedin.com/healthcare. Side effects may include faster job placement, improved work-life balance, and increased career satisfaction.
This is Let the Record Show, using common sense. Now, here are your hosts, Judge Richard Weinberg and Chairman Jesse Garcia.
Welcome back to Let the Record Show. I'm Judge Richard Weinberg. With me is the co-host of Let the Record Show, Chairman Jesse Garcia of the Republican Party. Jesse is the county chair of the Suffolk Republican Party and the vice chair of the New York State Republican Party. Joining us again today is Eric Levine, noted attorney, commentator, and essayist. And once again, I'm the lone Democrat, outnumbered by the two Republicans.
You can't fool any of us. You are not a Democrat.
I am a Democrat. But the problem is...
In name only.
No. Actually, you're on to something, Eric.
You're a dino. A Democrat in name only. You're a dino.
No. Actually, what they should do is they should change the name of the Democratic Party to the Democratic Socialist Party.
They should.
Okay,
yes.
Because it's my party who left me. I didn't leave my party, which I guess makes me a Reagan Democrat.
There you go.
Okay. All right, so...
Who are now considered rhinos.
Yes, of course. I mean,
it's full circle.
If you live long enough, you see everything, don't you?
Exactly.
All right, everything gets
come back again, just like Jordache jeans.
That's exactly.
Oh,
right.
let's hope not.
Save your jeans. You never know when they'll come back. Save your bell bottoms, Jesse. So,
no.
Folks, let's talk serious stuff. So Israel, as we sit here today, has just retaliated against Hezbollah, who did that horrific attack in Golan Heights, killing about a dozen kids and about 40 people are seriously injured. And,
almost all of which are children.
Right, playing a soccer game. And virtually all of the people involved were Druze, which is a minority sect. They're not Jews. It's a different religion, kind of akin to Zoroastrianism. And so the Islamic terrorists are no friends of the Druze, and the Druze are no friends of theirs. But those were the people who were victimized, and they're good citizens and supporters of the state of Israel. And Israel, of course, is very upset. They retaliated and took out the leader of the attack, the commander who led the attack that destroyed all those kids' lives and all those people, serious injuries. And at the same time, within hours, they also took out the political leader of Hamas, and they did that attack allegedly, because they're not taking credit for it. They did that attack in Tehran. Now, there may be other people who are responsible for that. That might have been infighting between the political faction and the military faction of Hamas. It might have been a contract by Iran because they couldn't control them, or it just might have been Israel sending a message that you attack Israel and you destroy 1,200 people and dislocate 80,000 people from their homes in the north of Israel, you are going to pay a price, and there's nowhere where we can't get to you. So, Jesse, what are your thoughts on that?
I think that the world is better off with these two individuals off the face of the earth. I think that Israel was right and just in their retaliation. And I think that they're, number one, I think we've always discussed that they are on the front lines of fighting a battle of good and evil, that they are fighting for us first, fighting for all of Western civilization first and its allies, including the United States and its partners in Europe. These actions were necessary. They needed to be taken. The killing, these terrorists continue to double down on the actions of October 7th when they raped women, they took hostages, beheaded children, they struck at the civilian population of Israelis. They continue to do that with the killing of these 12 children. And Israel had its every right to defend itself, defend its people, defend its sovereignty. And as I said at the beginning of my response, the world is better off of the loss of these two individuals. And I do think it is not only a message, it is a message with execution of action, that we're not talking about just empty words or issuing red lines like the Obama, Harris, Biden administrations, a way of thinking in foreign politics, in foreign affairs, of moving the red line. No, there's a discernible red line. You cross that red line, and there will be consequences for it. I think the United States is right and just in praising the actions of the Israeli government.
Eric, what do you think?
Well, there's two purposes behind the attacks. One is retaliation. The other is the critically important, indispensable deterrence capacity. Israel lost it up until October 7th. That's why they were attacked. People were their enemies in the region were not afraid of them. They were complacent, and they were convinced, their enemies were convinced that they would not retaliate in such force. So it was critically important, remains critically important, that Israel have a deterrence capacity that going forward, their enemies will be afraid to attack them. So that's what's in large parts going on here. But before I get into the analysis of the killings, I just want to make one observation. There was a picture, I believe was in the Wall Street Journal, but one of the papers of one of the little boys.
Washington Post.
Was in the Post. One of the little boys who was killed. He was wearing an Air Emirati shirt. That picture tells us a lot if you really want to dig into it. He was Druze. He's an Arab. He's an Israeli citizen. Druze serve in the Israeli military. Druze serve in the Knesset. That's the Israeli parliament. Druze serve on the courts. So when we hear cries of apartheid, we know that they are lies, because it's not just the Druze Arabs who are Israeli citizens who serve in the Knesset and serve on the courts and can own property and run businesses. So can the Palestinian Arabs who have chosen to be Israeli citizens. So we certainly know that this cry of Israel being an apartheid state is a lie. But it also, by his wearing the Air Emirati shirt, it demonstrates that Israel is a country who wants peace, because it evidences the Abraham Accords. And so when people attack Benjamin Netanyahu for being some sort of warmonger or some sort of murderer, he is the prime minister that worked out the Abraham Accords. He is the one that has been making peace in the region. They're on the cusp of making peace with the Saudi Arabians in expanding the Abraham Accords when Joe Biden became president, and then alienated the Saudis and MBS and put it out of reach, and they're trying to reclaim it now that he realized it was a mistake. But every time you hear things about Benjamin Netanyahu being this guy that wants war, he was the one who made peace. So let's keep that in mind. So let's go back to these attacks now. The first one is the assassination of Fouad Shukr. Who is he? He is the second in command of Hezbollah. He's right behind Nasrallah. He's the commander-in-chief of the Hezbollah military. He is the one who planned and ordered the attack on Majdal Shams. That's the Druze village in the Golan in Israel where the attack took place. 12 children were killed, approximately 40 were wounded. But there's something also very interesting about Fouad Shukr. He was also the mastermind of the murder of 241 American Marines in Lebanon.
That's right.
In the 1980s.
The Marine barracks.
He was the one responsible for that. So what does that show? When Benjamin Netanyahu came to Congress last week and made the address, he made the observation that that Israel's enemies are America's enemies. And this proves the point. Shukr attacks Israel. Shukr kills American Marines. Israel is fighting our war. We should never lose sight of that. They are killing our enemies, and they are dying for us. And we should always keep that in mind. Now, Jesse, you're half right on the United States applauding these killings. The Biden administration came out with a statement that they supported and recognized Israel's right to retaliate against Fouad Shukr. But the second killing of Ismail Haniyeh, the head of Hamas, the political head of Hamas, who was killed in Iran, we have remained silent. We have not said that was a really good idea. In fact, we've gone out of our way to say that we had no role in it. We had no part of it. We didn't know about it. Well, even if we didn't know about it, I think it was, to your point, though, which is essentially correct, the world is a better place that he is dead. Now, the Israelis have not taken responsibility for it, but I don't think there's any other country on the planet that is capable of such a precision attack.
And certainly not the United States.
Yeah. Well, the guy was asleep in bed when he was killed. There was a missile that came right into his right into his bedroom and killed him and his bodyguard. And it was not launched from within Iran. It was launched from outside Iran. The precision of that attack is remarkable, but it sends a number of messages. He was in Iran while attending the inauguration of Iran's new president, Masoud Pezeshkian.
He's a so-called moderate, right?
Yeah, there are no such thing as moderates in Iran. That's a lie and a trap that the Biden administration keeps falling into. There are no moderates. The Ayatollah would not allow a moderate to be elected, and he's the one who selects the people who can run. But putting that aside for the moment. So it embarrasses and humiliates Iran. This guy had all kinds of protections by the Iranians. He was there with his own bodyguard. He was there for the inauguration of the new president, and Israel was able to get to him. And the Arabs see it. Part of the Abraham Accords is that the Arab states that have joined it want Israel's protection. It is both an economic and military alliance. So they are looking to the Israelis to protect them. And this is sending a message to the Arab world, particularly the UAE, Bahrain, Saudi, Morocco, Sudan, that we are living up to. The Israelis are living up to their part of the bargain of being a reliable ally as a bulwark against Iran, which is a direct threat to their existence. Now, there was a third attack, one today, in Syria. The Israelis killed Amir Ali Hajizadeh. He's the commander of the IRGC, the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps, which is a terrorist organization that kills Americans, that is responsible for over 125 attacks against American service members in Iraq and Syria since October 7th, is responsible for 1/3 of the dead and wounded Americans in Iraq and Syria during those wars. This is another really righteous killing. The world is a better place if this guy is dead. I expect that there probably will be more targeted attacks. The real question, there are a couple of questions that remain. One is it the Israeli strategy not to have a massive military retaliation against Hezbollah now and are just doing the targeted attacks as a point of deterrence? And I also should point out that this is just a continuation. Remember the attack the Israelis carried out a week or so ago against the Houthis in Yemen. The United States, we've been having some rather ineffectual, pathetic responses to their closing of the shipping in the Red Sea. Took the Israeli military to do it for us, to attack the Houthis and put them back on their heels and attack them in Lebanon. That was a very massive attack. There'll be question about whether or not the Houthis will be attacking Israel anytime soon. But all of these are designed to kill their enemies, retaliate against their enemies, and send a deterrence. As it relates to whether or not there'll be a full-scale war in Lebanon, it is looming. It is looming, and it probably will happen because in 2006, at the end of the last major Israel-Hezbollah war, UN Resolution 1701 was passed, which required all of Hezbollah to move north of the Litani River so that southern Lebanon would be free of a Hezbollah presence. And they put UNIFIL, the United Nations International Force in Lebanon, in southern Lebanon to prevent Hezbollah from filling that void, filling that vacuum. And all they did was prevent the Israelis from attacking Hezbollah as Hezbollah moved in there. The Israelis had made clear, and correctly so, that unless Hezbollah voluntarily moves entirely north of the Litani River, consistent with the terms of UN Resolution 1701, which they agreed to in 2006, there will be a war. There will be an attack. Because we have to keep in mind, approximately 80,000 to 100,000 Israelis who live in northern Israel have been displaced. They have moved. They've made basically northern Israel unlivable. That's the equivalent of almost 4 million Americans. What would America's response be if there were attacks from Canada or Mexico displacing 4 million Americans? Our response would be massive, at least hopefully massive, to prevent those threats so that people could move back feeling safe. Israel can't have its borders move south or north, and it's a small enough country as it is, but no sovereign state can have their borders moved because of threat of attack. So unless Hezbollah moves voluntarily and quickly, I expect that there will be an overwhelming, huge, massive type of attack in Lebanon that will make the southern Lebanon basically uninhabitable for humans.
Jesse, we're going to take a break in a moment. What when we come back from the break, what I want to ask you to discuss with our listeners is Netanyahu's speech, the significance of that speech itself, but even more compelling, the significance of the boycott of that speech by some 60 to 80 Democratic members of the House and the Senate, and the failure of the current Vice President of the United States, the presumptive nominee of the Democratic Party, to boycott that and to humiliate herself, our country, in an attempt to humiliate the state of Israel and its prime minister. So I want you to talk about that, if you would, when we come back on Let the Record Show. Ladies and gentlemen, we're taking a break. This is Let the Record Show with Chairman Jesse Garcia of the Republican Party, noted attorney, commentator, and essayist Eric Levine, and attorney as well, right? And I'm Judge Richard Weinberg. We'll be back in a moment with more interesting conversation. Stay tuned.
Let the Record Show is on the air.
Morning decisions. A creamy mocha frappuccino drink? A sweet vanilla? Maybe a smooth caramel? Or that white chocolate mocha? Whichever you choose, delicious coffee awaits. Start your day with bottled Starbucks Frappuccino drinks. Pick up a bottle near you wherever you buy your groceries.
I already love same-day delivery with Shipt, but it's so much better since I signed up for Target Circle 360. Why? Because I no longer pay price markups from the majority of stores through Shipt. Only a handful of alcohol retailers and items don't count. That means no markups on groceries, pet food, even home goods and makeup. So to recap, I have more time to catch up on life while someone shops for me, and I spend less. It's a win-win. Order now at shipt.com/360. Terms apply.
Home means something different to everyone. But with Rocket Mortgage, home can mean even more. It can mean a college education, taming your high-interest debt, even a renovation. We've made it easier than ever to use your home equity. That home you worked so hard for, now it can work hard for you. Call 800-4ROCKET or visit rocket.com to find out more.
Rocket Mortgage, LLC, licensed in all 50 states, and MLSConsumerAccess.org, number 3030.
The rural way of life is about making everyone feel at home. Tractor Supply chose advanced 5G solutions from T-Mobile for Business to transform intelligent customer service. Together, we put the power of AI to work across 2,200 stores, keeping things running seamlessly inside, curbside, and countryside. This is elevated customer experience. This is Tractor Supply with T-Mobile for Business. Take your business further at T-Mobile.com/now.
This is Let the Record Show. Now, here are your hosts, Judge Richard Weinberg and Suffolk County Republican Committee Chairman Jesse Garcia.
We are back on Let the Record Show. This is Judge Richard Weinberg with Eric Levine, noted attorney, commentator, and essayist, and Chairman Jesse Garcia of the Republican Party, our esteemed co-host. Jesse, at the break I said to you, I want to talk about Netanyahu's speech, the significance of that speech to the world, to the larger interests of Western civilization, and the fact that some 60 to 80 Democrats, both senators and Congress members of the House, boycotted that. And our vice president, the sitting vice president of the United States, the woman who would be president, the presumptive Democratic nominee, an attempt to humiliate the state of Israel, and Netanyahu, the prime minister, actually humiliated herself. My thoughts. But I want to hear your thoughts, Jesse.
My thoughts, first and foremost, watch the speech. Let's not forget, though, the actions of Chuck Schumer, the majority leader of the U.S. Senate, who refused to shake hands with the leader of Israel. I think that has significance, and nothing that he can explain away. I would imagine that someone in a position of power like Chuck Schumer, and being of the Jewish faith, would be someone who would be more than over the top, and justified in being so, about supporting the state of Israel and the U.S.-Israeli partnership. And he, because of politics and his need for holding on to and grasping to the levers of power in the U.S. Senate, has refused to do so. He has put his own faith. He has put our foreign affairs and our diplomatic relations with our best ally and strongest ally in Israel in jeopardy. I thought that the speech by Netanyahu, and I've watched all of his speeches and before the joint session of Congress, was compelling, comprehensive, passionate, and basically told us what we all know is that this battle that Israel is waging is a battle for its allies like America and its partners. I think it was a very good speech. But what bothered me is the actions that were taken afterwards. If you want to be the president of the United States, whether you receive the coronation or not, you delay a campaign stop. Vice President Harris should have delayed her campaign stop, which is basically with a sorority group, to attend that speech, to meet with the leader, Prime Minister Netanyahu, that day, be in attendance. No, what happened? She had to do her campaign spot, and then they met the next day. And in her first meeting with a foreign ally or a foreign dignitary since being coronated as the nominee for the Democratic Party for president, she failed miserably. Her comments publicly were abhorrent, and as Netanyahu said, set back potential negotiations for the return of those hostages. You cannot ask the state of Israel to disarm and disengage in the protection of its people and its nation for the purposes of basically unilaterally. You want to get to the peace talks? You want to have a ceasefire? Release those hostages now, including, 20 or so more Americans that are still being held hostage, and we don't even know if they're alive.
They're 8.
No, but by the way, let me also say, not only did she undermine any meaningful effort to have a ceasefire that worked, she sent out a signal to the terrorist groups that that the United States does not have the back, and the future regime, if she wins, does not have the back of Israel, the fighter and protector of Western civilization, and our ally, as you correctly point out. And the attack on the Druze community on the Golan Heights can literally be attributed to that, because she emboldened them, that anything goes.
And she spoke of mass civilian casualties. It's the Hamas who are using civilians as shields. Their strategic forces are placed in schools and hospitals. They're using children and women. I'm just a poor schmo from Long Island, and I know that. This is someone who wants to lead the free world as our president, is getting briefed by the intelligence division, is being told directly what's going on there, and yet she continues to play politics for her own personal gain.
I mean, look, Richard, you made the point, having Israel's back. That's exactly why she didn't want to be in that picture. If she did her job as vice president and presided over his address to the joint session of Congress, she would have been sitting right behind him. And for her campaign, which is being run by Dearborn, the progressive Jew haters in Dearborn, Michigan, that would have been a bridge too far. She could not have the picture of her sitting behind Benjamin Netanyahu. It would have been political suicide for her, in her mind. That's why she didn't go. She didn't want that picture. And as to her speech after she met Netanyahu the day after, Jesse, you're 100% right. It was disgusting. She was putting pressure and blame on Israel for defending itself. Let's remember, when she says Israel has the right to defend itself, what does that mean in her mind? In her mind, it means that if Israel can shoot rockets out of the sky before they land,
that's swell.
That's great. And if Jews die, she may even cry on TV. She'll be so upset. But what she can't tolerate and will not tolerate is Israel retaliating. So when she says defend itself, she doesn't mean that Israel is able to respond and make sure it doesn't happen again. She just means you can put all these, the Iron Dome up and trying to protect yourself. It's like trying to win a football game as long as the other team has the ball the entire game and it's always played inside your 20-yard line.
It's even worse, Jesse, because and Eric, what she said in those remarks is that there's only one solution to this war, which is a two-state solution.
Oh no, she got it even worse. Yeah, first of all, you're 100% right. There is no two-state solution. That's dead on arrival at this point. The only people that want a two-state solution are progressive Democrats. Nobody else. Hamas doesn't want a two-state solution. They want to destroy Israel and exterminate the Jews. The Palestinian Authority doesn't want a two-state solution. They want to exterminate Israel. Yasser Arafat was offered a state in 2000. He said, in 2008. He said no. Abbas was offered in 2000, and Abbas was offered a state in 2008. They both said no and declared war. Hamas was given a state in 2005 when Israel left Gaza, and what they do? They turned it into a terrorist hellhole. So the Palestinians don't want a two-state solution. They want a one-state solution. The Arab states don't want a two-state solution because they know that any Palestinian state...
It'd be Iranian.
It will either be an Iranian proxy led by the Muslim Brotherhood, which they say is public enemy number one and Iran is number two, which both will pose an existential threat to their existence.
Jordan,
the Emirates, all the Gulf states, Saudi Arabia, all the Gulf states, or it'll be a failed state which will be filled by Al Qaeda and ISIS type of terrorist organizations, also posing an existential threat. So Hamas doesn't want it, the Palestinians don't want it, the Arab states don't want it, Iran doesn't want it because they also want Israel destroyed. Yep. So
let me say this to you. I have to interrupt you because Blinken today is going out and saying that the advantage of having Harris as a future president is her expertise in foreign affairs. The naivety, the stupidity, the foolishness. So, Jesse, what do you say?
Can I just make one more point? I'm sorry, Jesse. Let me just make one more point.
No, go ahead.
Yeah. So, Richard, you were saying the worst thing she said was about the two-state solution. No, I would say the worst thing she said was when she said this is not a binary choice. Damn it, it is a binary choice. It is good versus evil. It's civilization versus depravity. And this idea that when you say it is not a binary choice, it's complex. What you're saying is that Hamas and Israel there's a moral equivalent. Yeah, right. And and the next time a progressive tells you it's something that's really simple is complex, just know that what they're saying to you is, I'm trying to defend the indefensible. I can't admit reality because I don't like the reality. So just assume that I'm smarter than you and you're too stupid to understand and don't require me to explain it. Because damn it, it is a binary choice. Israel is good. Hamas is evil. Period. End of sentence.
Jesse.
I can't add more to that, but I think that for Secretary of State Blinken, who's been a failure at his foreign policy initiatives
on
and his
everything,
actions, has been an utter failure. Every place that he has touched, Taiwan, China, Ukraine, Russia, the Middle East, he's an utter failure. And he, in his own comments, just now, as it was released, as you reported, Your Honor, just demonstrates and clearly shines the light that this is the foreign policy of the United States of America for the last 4 years, and under the Obama, Biden, Harris motif is simply this: political in nature and that of appeasement. And our allies cannot no longer trust us. We don't have anybody's back under Harris, Biden, or Obama.
I think Harris, by the way, in my not so humble opinion, if she becomes president, will be an even worse president than Biden.
I agree with that 100% because
I agree with that too.
Joe Biden, for all his infirmities, and there are many, I think on the Israel issue, I believe him when he says he's a Zionist. I just think he's weak, and I think he's getting some very bad advice, but I think at his core, he's pro-Israel. You cannot say that about Kamala Harris. Kamala Harris. She's absolutely not. You know, she is from the progressive wing of the party.
She's endorsed in speech after speech after speech all these anti-Semitic riots and taking over of the schools, and she says they have a point.
Yeah, she can understand their enthusiasm. She can understand their moral outrage. Yeah, that's outrageous. Talk about outrageous. But I want to come back also to Netanyahu's speech for a second, because I was there. I was honored to have been there. It was one of the great experiences of my life. It was really moving. I thought the Prime Minister delivered an outstanding speech. But when we were in there, and as he was walking in, first the senators are introduced, and then as he walks in, the Republican senators were all on their feet, cheering, shaking his hand, patting him on the back. But the Democratic senators broke into three groups. The biggest group was Chuck Schumer, Blumenthal from Connecticut, another Jew, Klobuchar, Cory Booker, who sometimes says he's like part Jewish, because he has such a close relationship with the Jewish people in New Jersey, Peters, and Stabenow. That was one group. When Netanyahu walked in, they stood, but none of them would shake his hand. Then there was a second group of two, Murphy from Connecticut and Warnock from Georgia. They wouldn't even stand when he walked in. They wouldn't stand at a single moment during the speech. They wouldn't applaud at a single moment during the speech. No matter what he said, even when he was praising Biden, they wouldn't applaud anything that Netanyahu said. At least occasionally, Schumer got confused and he looked around. Should I stand? Should I shake? Should I sit? Should I applaud? So when they said nice things about America, occasionally they stood up. But I think it's important. There was a third group: Joe Manchin, Senator Fetterman from Pennsylvania, and Senator Sinema from Arizona. God bless those three. They were standing. They were shaking his hand. They were embracing him. They were outstanding. I mean, the funny thing about Fetterman is when he sat down and he crossed his legs, you could see he was wearing no socks. But you know what? If he showed up in a hoodie, that would have been okay with me.
I would chip in for another hoodie and get him a pair of socks.
Those three were spectacular. And the other Democrat that deserves a shout out here was Steny Hoyer. He also, not a senator, but he was a member of the Congress of the House.
Former majority
whip, I think. He was whip. But he was great. He also was very enthusiastic. But then there was the Democratic House caucus, just as general. Roughly half of them, a significant portion of them didn't show up. And those who did, half of them wouldn't stand. Half of them wouldn't clap. And then, of course, you had Rashida Tlaib sitting there with this insipid sign, genocide, stop the murder. I mean, this is just a Jew hater from Dearborn. But that is the vote. The Rashida Tlaib vote is who Kamala Harris is working so hard to get. Harris would be an unmitigated disaster for Israel and therefore an unmitigated disaster for Western civilization.
Trump has said, and people don't like to hear this, he says he just doesn't understand how it is that a Jewish person could vote Democratic with these calculations in mind. And they say, you have no right to say that. That's awful. That's terrible. Guess what? Donald Trump is absolutely right. Unless you're totally suicidal, unless you want to forget the lessons of history, these are existential moments, not just for the state of Israel, but for the Jewish community worldwide, where they're being threatened, harassed, intimidated, assaulted, and indeed murdered. This is a big moment. And to pat yourself on the back and say, look how liberal I am, is to miss the point. When they open up the ovens, when they come looking for you, house by house, the Democratic Party has shown they don't care what happens to the Jewish community worldwide, and they certainly don't care what happens to the state of Israel. This is Let the Record Show with Chairman Jesse Garcia of the Republican Party, noted attorney, commentator, essayist Eric Levine. I'm Judge Richard Weinberg. We'll be back for our final segment in a few moments. Please stay with us for more interesting conversation.
This is Let the Record Show.
Five immersive worlds, one amazing theme park. Get ready to explore the all-new Universal Epic Universe, featuring the wizarding world of Harry Potter, Ministry of Magic, Super Nintendo World, How to Train Your Dragon, Isle of Berk, and Dark Universe. Epic Universe, now open at Universal Orlando Resort. Our universe will never be the same. Tickets and packages on sale now at universalorlando.com.
Tell Me What Happened is a show that asks, what would you do if you saw someone in danger?
I'm not making it out of this river. I'm never going to see my mom again. I'm never going to see my sister again.
Would you jump to their rescue? Or hope someone else does?
I couldn't see her head above the water. All I could see was her hair. If she was alive, she didn't have very long.
These are true stories of people that chose to help a stranger who was in trouble. Listen today to Tell Me What Happened, an original podcast by OnStar.
Shopping is hard, right? But I found a better way. Stitch Fix online personal styling makes it easy. I just give my stylist my size, style, and budget preferences. I order boxes when I want and how I want. No subscription required. And he sends just for me pieces, plus outfit recommendations and styling tips. I keep what works and send back the rest. It's so easy. Make style easy. Get started today at stitchfix.com/Spotify. That's stitchfix.com/Spotify.
You need a vacation, so why not come play in LA? Fill your days with fun and let Los Angeles dazzle you with iconic landmarks, epic scenery, and stunning coastlines. And when the sun goes down, it's the perfect place to enjoy world-class dining and nightlife. Let play lead the way and soak up all this city has to offer. Start planning your LA getaway now at visitcalifornia.com.
This is Let the Record Show. Now, here are your hosts, Judge Richard Weinberg and Suffolk County Republican Committee Chairman Jesse Garcia.
We are back on Let the Record Show with Chairman Jesse Garcia of the Republican Party, noted attorney Eric Levine. I'm Judge Richard Weinberg. Eric, at the break, you had some thoughts that you want to share?
Yeah, I mean, one of the Kamala Harris likes to parade out, and the Democrats like to parade out to show what a staunch supporter of Israel she is. She has to be, because her husband's Jewish and her stepdaughter's Jewish. Well, Marx was Jewish and Trotsky were Jewish, and if you read their writings, these are two of the biggest Jew haters that ever walked the planet. So just being Jewish doesn't make it any better. If a Jew says something stupid about Israel or something stupid about
Jews, stupid.
It doesn't make it any less stupid. But also keep in mind the stepdaughter. So, but the stepdaughter has raised, since October 7th, has been raising money for UNRWA. That's the United Nations Relief Workers Association.
And what do they do?
And they have been complicit. It's been demonstrated to a certitude that they were complicit in October 7th. They participated in October 7th. And what was Kamala Harris's response when she heard that her stepdaughter was raising money for UNRWA? She said that she was proud of her. She was proud of her that she was raising money for terrorists. That's who wants to be president. And as to her husband, he's such a Jew. When he was asked to talk about the meaning of Hanukkah, he started describing Purim. He has no idea what being Jewish means. The fact that he was born Jewish and was circumcised on the 8th day of his life doesn't make him any more Jewish. It doesn't make him any more knowledgeable about Israel or world affairs. Doesn't make him any more a friend of the Jewish people. You are gay. You are judged by your actions and what you say and do. And what he says and does is antithetical to the existence of the state of Israel and for the survival of American Jewry. He is no friend of the Jews, and so hiding behind that is meaningless.
Well, that's a good segue, Eric and Jesse, because this is the question I want to raise. And I'll lead off with Jesse on this discussion. This is the question. Who is Kamala Harris? Is she qualified to lead America and the free world? You would feel safer and better? Is the future of America in strong hands if she's the leader of this country? Let me say the following. When you cannot defend your policies, you erase them. Let me say that again. You cannot defend your policies and your positions and your actions. You erase them. How do I know that? It was pointed out by no lesser light than George Orwell, who wrote 1984, the great classic of totalitarianism. And that was based on Stalinist Russia, how they expunged history. They changed history. And right now, the Democratic media and all their sycophants, the Democratic press and the Democratic tech people and the appeasers all over for the Democratic Party are busy reinventing Kamala Harris. And I submit to you, this reinvention is one of the most despicable acts in the world because she has a history. And the history is being a creature of the progressive left. She's always been that. She's also a creature of identity politics. She's only the vice president of the United States and will only be the Democratic nominee for the presidency because she's a black woman
She's a woman of color. I don't know that
That's
she's
it.
black.
That's all.
Her mother's from Jamaica, and her father's from India. So I don't know that makes her black. I think it makes her just one.
Okay, she's a woman of color.
Nikki Haley is not black. She's a woman of color.
But what I'm saying to you is that's the key to her political success. Not her brains, not her experience, not her accomplishments. She is the beneficiary of this DEI woke identity politics, and it's destructive of the entire quality of life, civilization, orderly government, safety, strong economy, national security. So,
And let me just make a point. And how do you know that? Because Joe Biden said when he was going to pick a vice presidential candidate when he ran in 2020, he said the criterion are that it be a woman of color. He inserted race
of
into
course.
this.
And now that
the Republicans are calling them out on it, all of a sudden Republicans are racist.
It's ridiculous.
Bunch of garbage.
Jesse, your turn.
My turn. First and foremost, the question is the one that you asked. Is she qualified to be president? That's the first question that every American, Republican, Democrat, Independent, does not matter, should ask themselves. And the answer to that with Kamala Harris is an unequivocal, direct, clear no. Every task, job, responsibility she has been provided or assigned, from the failed border security to her own Biden-Harris White House, cringing every time she was sent out to put out the message of the week for the administration, and cringe at her
word salad
and her presentation, advocating for the Green New Scam, being against fracking, a major industrial component that makes
She backed away from that. She needs votes. She needs votes in Pennsylvania. She backed away from it.
Exactly. Please.
She's against fracking. She's for fracking. She's against fracking. Now she's back for fracking.
She's a defund the police individual saying point blank that she thinks that we have to reimagine public safety, and that does not mean putting more cops on the street. Certainly her insulting comments that we've already covered regarding with Netanyahu, and her own policies as a district attorney, where she supported the similar legislation and concept of cashless bail that we have here in the state of New York, which ties the hands of cops and judges and prosecutors and makes revolving door justices, which lets bad guys, criminals, go out on the street faster so they can commit more crime. And of course, it's her own program where she took drug dealers and instead of keeping them in jail, she gave them job training. She's an utter failure, and her record is going to come back to haunt her as we move forward. Did she get a bump in the polls? Anybody after Joe Biden was going to get a bump in the polls, no matter what.
You're right, because they were so happy to get rid of that guy.
Yeah.
Anyone.
It was like a direct shot of adrenaline into somebody's heart who's just about to die.
And we all talked about the $200 million raised in a week. All those monies, or most of those monies, were monies that were being held back by big donors.
Exactly.
This was expected. It's a desperate attempt. This past week, she had a coming out party in Atlanta, putting the Georgia back on the map. As I said, it's expected. We're going to get a higher rating on that, but it's going to peter out as this goes forward. Will she get a bit of a bump on her issues involving the Democratic National Convention? She should. She wants to. But what I will tell you is I believe, and I hope it does not happen as an American, but I believe you're going to have in 2024 very same demonstrations, riots, and protests, violent protests that you had in 1968 when the Democratic Convention was in Chicago.
Oh, the pro-Hamas crowd has already told us they were doing that.
Exactly. They already said they were doing that. You're right. We saw what happened in our nation's capital when Netanyahu was there. The Democrats, have to put all their chips in the center. No matter where they are, they knew they could not overtake or replace Joe Biden and the first vice president, female woman of color, that for their base to be forward. She is the most progressive socialist Democrat there is. She's a lefty leader, and she's not going to be able to run away from her record, no matter how hard big tech and the mainstream media, like the New York Times, the Washington Post, the Meta, Facebook, Twitter, try to, scrub their own stories and scrub the internet, they're not going to be able to do that because the Trump campaign has that information already, and they are now putting it out there.
They're doing
it diligently.
Let me tell you something interesting. I got a phone call.
Now tell us something really boring.
No, I'm going to tell you something interesting.
Oh, okay, good.
It didn't come from me. It came from a previous guest of ours on Let the Record Show.
Are we going to play the guessing game now? No.
No, I'm going to tell you. You want to play the guessing game?
We've
had a lot of interesting guests, Jesse. But I'll make it easy.
Bozo the Clown, so I'm always on.
Bozo. Well, listen, Bozo the Clown. We already had that as president, and we have vice president. We have Bozo. Look, they got a bump, as you correctly point out, Jesse, when they replaced Biden. They will get a bump unless she totally self-destructs at the Democratic National Convention or there's rioting in the street, which even the left wakes up and realizes civilization is at peril. But there could be a third bump. And our friend Michael Davis, who was on the show with us a couple of months ago, phoned me and we had a discussion last night. And he said, what we have to be worried about to get a third bump for Harris is that Biden decides after the convention to throw his hat away, take it out of governmental ring, and turn over the presidency to Kamala Harris so she has the benefits of being the incumbent. Now, I would say in the ordinary course, Michael Davis is one of the smartest guys I know. He's absolutely brilliant. I would say in the ordinary course, that's a little too conspiratorial. But you know what? I would not put that past the Democratic Party because they've proven time and time and time again that they will do anything to either seize or maintain power. Eric.
Well, actually, I think that would be a good thing. Let her try and run something. She'll fail. So I don't think that helps them. So that sometimes conspiracies don't work. But one of the at her coming out party in Georgia, I was watching the speech. I was on CNN last night. We did a panel. This actually came up. And this goes to your issue about being Orwellian. She actually said in her speech that this was going to be, quote, a people-based campaign. And I made the observation that was absolutely laughable because she's never gotten a single vote. When it's kind of like the People's Republic of China. The Communist Party's made a decision. This is going to be our candidate. This is going to be our leader. And the people will love it. And all of a sudden
if you don't love it,
exactly, you'll die. So, we will tell you what to think. That is how the Democratic Party is run. It's not a people-based campaign. She didn't get a single vote in 2020. Excuse me. She didn't get a single vote in 2020. And she didn't get a single vote for president in 2024. They didn't have any primaries. She'll get the votes of the delegates, but Joe Biden got 14 million votes. Those are his delegates. She's gotten zero between 2020.
People did not want, listen, gentlemen, people did not want her. They've reinvented her because there's no other choice.
Right, exactly. So then she moves on from the people-based campaign and she starts talking about Orwellian, talking about the great accomplishments she's had and what her policies will be going forward. One of her great accomplishments apparently was the border. She actually said that.
She's blaming, by the way, Jesse, listen to this. Today she's announced that she's always supported having more border agents and Trump didn't. What are your thoughts on that, Jesse?
But I'm not done.
It's a complete fabrication. It's a complete lie. This is a narrative they're putting forward with their mainstream media partners and their partners in big tech. But before we go back to Eric, I do want to just jump on something regarding what he brought up and you brought up about the 14 million votes. This is an individual, as you said, in 2020 did not receive one vote. This year did not receive one vote. What the Democrats did in real time, in the clear view of the American people, was discount, disqualify, set aside, whatever adjective you want to use, for the votes of 14 million Americans.
They've redefined the word democracy.
No,
They've redefined democracy.
Gentlemen, this was a coup.
Before you,
this was a coup.
Right.
The Democratic Party is the threat to democracy.
Well, that's the whole concept of Orwell.
In front of everyone, basically set aside. It doesn't matter what your vote means. This is our nominee, and that's going to what gives credence to those people in the country who still have doubts, who may not have had doubts, but now have to question what really did transpire in Pennsylvania, Arizona, Georgia, when, because of COVID, those governments weaponized the electoral system.
Let's not go back to Stalin election stuff.
Casting some doubts about what happened in 2020, because they saw it in 2024, and the Democratic Party, as you pointed out, Eric, it was like the Communist Party, Chinese CCP just said, "Okay, you're out. This is it."
So they've redefined democracy. Talk about Orwellian. The concept of 1984 is that you take common words and you use them as weapons by giving the common word the exact opposite definition of what they're supposed to be, like the administration of peace, which is how you make war. So democracy to the Democrats right now is nobody votes. We tell you what it is. That's democracy. So then when you move past their redefinition, the redefining of democracy, you get into what her policies are. So after taking a lap for her great success on the border, she came up with she started attacking the concept of inflation. Inflation's coming down, but prices are still too high. So what am I going to do? I'm going to prosecute gougers. There's no evidence that anybody's gouging anything. It's just that inflation has caused prices to go way up. So because the prices are high, we can't blame inflation because that would admit our failure. We're going to prosecute gougers.
And what do you have inflation? Because of all the excess government spending.
Well, because
and she was a tiebreaker for Jesse. She was a tiebreaker for a large number of those bills that have caused this inflation.
What is it? The Anti-Inflationary Act, whatever it's called.
If that's not Orwellian, what is?
Talk about Orwellian. That's how we got inflation. So what was her other? What was another one of her brilliant ideas? Rents are too high. So what did she want to do? She wants rent control.
That works well.
Works real well. Move to New York, Kamala. Move to New York. You want a housing crisis across the nation? Impose rent control. Nobody's going to build. Nobody's going to maintain their apartments. No one's going to have a place to live. She never mentioned foreign policy because she has so many successes she can talk about. Who is she? She's a failure, and God knows she'll just say anything.
Yeah, the problem is, and Jesse, I want to get your thoughts on this. To me, as the House Democrat, even though my good friend Eric Levine calls me a Democrat in name only, I still...
You're a dino.
That's right, I'm a dino.
You're a dino and I'm a rhino. There you go.
I am telling you that I'm still a Democrat, but this party needs to be renamed as a Democratic Socialist Party. Okay?
Absolutely.
That's what that
party is. They run the party, they run the policy, they run the elections, they run everything. The Democratic Socialists of America. That's what they do. That is what they do.
And they took over, by the way, they took over the party. And who took it over? The progressive types, the California Democratic Progressives. They took over the party. And if you like the success of how wonderful California is doing it, and they're trying to do it in New York, and some having some degree of success in destroying New York as well, if you look at it, that's what they want to do for the rest of the country. Jesse, what do we do about this?
Well, to go to what you're saying, absolutely. But let's just say, she said, Kamala Harris, as Eric pointed out, said she wanted a national, I guess a universal rent control. She's also the one that called for universal health care, which means that your private...
Medicare for all. And she wanted to,
including the illegal migrants.
Which means that
and she wanted to outlaw private insurance.
Out the door.
Yeah,
exactly. And what else happens is that, this little thing, the health benefits and the health programs that major unions who represent hundreds of thousands of hardworking Americans would be wiped out. And we'd get this cookie cutter type of healthcare benefit that they have in other parts of the world.
Which doesn't work. Which does not work.
Don't work. All we got to do is look to Canada. It doesn't work. Listen, we are seeing the California. I think one of the topics we wanted to discuss was that the California Progressive Democrats have taken over. And I mean, all you have to do, and you are absolutely correct, Your Honor, just look at California, economically, socially, from a public safety point of view. Economically, they're the highest tax residents in the country. There's an exodus going out of California to Texas and other southern states, other red states. Socially, Their homeless condition is out of control. Only now, because Kamala Harris is running for office, that Newsom is filing executive orders to try and clean up communities like the former.
And by the way, it's the Supreme Court of the United States, Jesse, who the Democrats are attacking and waging war against. The third branch of government that protects all of us. They're the ones who said it's okay for local governments to enforce public safety and quality of life, and the homeless do not have a right to live on the streets. They're the ones who said it up until that time, giving Newsom the cover to do what he should have been doing years ago.
All along, he could have been doing that. That goes without question. It basically validated any of the actions that were taken previously by anyone in any of the states. And from a public safety point of view, we've seen what cashless bail does here. We've seen her programs in basically you can commit crime without any consequences. That is the Kamala Harris, the Democrat platform, right there in a nutshell.
Who does she pick for Veep?
That's a good question.
Before we go off.
Yeah, right. We have a couple of minutes. Jesse, who does she pick as a vice president candidate?
I believe that she's going to pick Shapiro.
I don't, because going back to the beginning of the show, he's Jewish. Not only is he Jewish, he actually is Jewish. He actually
is Jewish.
He's called out a lot of these campus protests, and has told the University of Pennsylvania, for one, that they have to cut it out. So I don't think the progressive wing of the Democratic Party is going to allow a straight white Jewish guy to be her Veep candidate.
You think the nice people in Michigan and Minnesota, who they're playing to?
Yeah, the
Islamists?
Rashida Tlaib is not interested in Josh Shapiro being Veep. Now I could be wrong. She may surprise us, and she may do that. But I think it's more likely she would pick Waltz from Minnesota or Kelly from Arizona. She may pick Shapiro because it's a very logical pick, but I'm not seeing it.
I think Kelly would be a logical pick, and that was my number two. But just remember, every path for Kamala Harris to win the presidency requires Pennsylvania, and her fracking issues, her fracking comments, and her comments on her penchant and part of the administration of pushing electronic cars are going to hurt her in Pennsylvania and in Michigan. And I think you just got to look at math. Pennsylvania's got 19 electoral votes. Michigan's got 15 electoral votes. I think she's tied in Michigan, and I believe that's where she can build her, where she can solidify Pennsylvania, then tack and spend time in Michigan.
Well, I tell you something. The idea, as I sit here as we conclude this week's show, the idea of having Kamala Harris as President of the United States
is very real.
It's very real. She, Rich Lowry wrote a column in the National Review, and he said that Kamala Harris is a clear and present danger to the United States of America. And unfortunately, her policies demonstrate that it is a clear and present danger. She wants to legitimize all these illegal migrants. Who's going to pay for that? Who are these people? The border will be open. We're going to be looking at a country.
She'll make them citizens so they won't be illegal immigrants.
That's
anymore.
Right. And you're going to be looking at a country with 4 years of a Harris administration that absolutely, positively you will not recognize. And I do not know how you can bring it back if you have 4 years of a Harris administration.
I mean, this is a woman who said that America is a systemically racist country.
Yes, exactly.
Right.
The one thing, back to Vice President, the other thing, one thing I want to note is that who has not been mentioned or has dropped out for Vice President? Roy Cooper of North Carolina, Newsom, the big heavy hitters of the Democratic Party have stepped aside on here. There's two reasons for this, and I think those individuals are the smart ones because they're playing the long game. They are playing the long game. If Kamala Harris is successful, which I don't believe she will be, and whoever her vice president is going to be the presumptive nominee at the end of her term, whether it be 4 years or 8 years. I believe Shapiro, you're absolutely right. She's going to get some pushback there. But I believe Newsom, Cooper, and others, they're playing for 2028 right now. I honestly believe that those individuals are playing for 2028, and that's why you're seeing.
They don't want to be identified with her.
They don't want to be identified. They want to be clean saviors of the party and change it into its direction. I think Mark Kelly, love him as an astronaut. I'm a big science fiction fan. Love NASA. Disappointment as a senator. And he's really a lightweight when it comes to politics. and what he brings. I think he's been a lightweight even in Arizona, and I don't think he delivers Arizona that much right now. So I think that's why you're seeing these two names coming forward, and the names that you've been seeing. I think 4 or 5 names like who are the other ones? Anyway, the other one is the Michigan governor has
dropped out, right?
Has dropped out.
Gretchen Whitmer.
Right. Well, speaking of dropping out, Jesse, Eric, we now have to drop out off the air because this has been the Let the Record Show. Jesse and Eric, I want to thank you very, very much for another interesting show. Jesse Garcia, the Vice Chair of the State Republican Party, County Chair of the Suffolk County Republican Party. Eric Levine, noted attorney, commentator, and essayist. I'm Judge Richard Weinberg. We hope you've enjoyed the show, and we look forward to being with you again next week on Let the Record Show. Thank you.
This is Let the Record Show.